Wonderful. Good morning. Welcome back, everybody. SF Live, episode number 85 today. I'm joined by a special guest today. It's Claudia Tornquist. She's President and CEO of Kodiak Copper. But before we switch over to Claudia, you all know the spiel by now. Please use hashtag AskKDK for your questions during our live conversation with Claudia. We'll get to the questions at the end of our conversation with her. We already received quite a few really good ones that we'll get to, so stay tuned for the Q&A part at the end, and feel free to ask any more questions you have. It's anonymous, so don't feel threatened by it, and it is an interactive format, so please make use of the opportunity. Furthermore, please follow us here on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, give us a like, hit the subscription button as well, and leave a comment. What do you think of Kodiak? What do you think of Claudia as the CEO? What do you think of the project? Leave that in the comments. We'd be happy to get back to you on that as well. It is a format that is for the audience, for the listeners, not to show off what we know and what we do here. So that's really important to us. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Claudia Tornquist of Kodiak Copper. Claudia, how are you doing this morning? Welcome on the show.
Hello, good morning. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Kai. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great. It feels like we're one of the first ones to interview properly. You've done a couple of webinars and stuff, but you haven't really done a live interview talking about the results. So it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us. And for a second, I was thinking about scaring our audience and doing it in German.
Not sure that would be a good idea.
Right? So, because you're German, I'm German.
So English for that matter. It's much easier.
We have a mixed audience, and I've noticed chatting with you before, my German is fading. I'm pronouncing words wrong, and and mining language is English. All the terminology is in English, so it makes it a lot easier. Given that we only have about 20-25 minutes, let's jump right in. A lot of maybe some of our audience doesn't know or is not familiar with Kodiak. So let's start off with a quick 30-second recap of Kodiak, and then we'll dive much deeper.
Okay, Kodiak in a nutshell. We are a copper gold porphyry exploration company. Our main project is called MPD, and it's in southern BC, 3 hours drive from Vancouver, where we just announced some really nice drill results. What's important to know about Kodiak is the founder and chairman is Chris Taylor, who many of your listeners will know from Great Bear, of course, one of the great discovery stories. And we're also part of the discovery group, which is put together by John Robbins, which gives us a great network of contact expertise and makes us a much stronger company.
Fantastic. No, that's a great intro. And let's start with a bit of history. We've known each other for a little bit as well. We've been around. We've actually done some business in the past together while you were still Dunedin Ventures. I liked starting at the beginning. So Dunedin was a diamond company, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but run us through the transformation process. What made you switch from diamonds to copper, and how did you find the project? Let's start with a tad of history there.
Yeah. Well, as you said, we started out as a diamond company, but the diamond market has been very difficult for a couple of years now. And after some nice initial exploration results, we just looked at the market and saw the difficult market and decided to add to our portfolio. And Chris Taylor knew about 2 copper projects that he both really liked. And it's actually interesting. Many people think of Chris as a gold guy because obviously Great Bear is a big gold discovery. But Chris's core expertise as a geologist is actually in copper porphyries. And so he knew 2 copper porphyry projects that he really liked. And we acquired those in Kodiak. And those are now the main focus of our work. And as I said, MPD is our most advanced project. We started drilling that last year and had some really nice initial results, and now this summer hit some much better grades, and those results were really a game changer for the project.
Yeah, definitely Cinderella Story. I think that's a great terminology. Before you were the unloved guest at the party, and now you're the hottest story on the street here in Vancouver. So the chats are exploding at co.ca, Twitter. Quite a lot of guys are talking about Kodiak right now because of those results, and you've attracted quite a huge investor as well. You're raising $10.5 million from tech. How did that come about? And give us some more color. What's the relationship there now, and what's it going to be?
Yeah, well, tech were interested in our projects in their backyard, Highland Valley. Their big copper mine is just around the corner. So we've been talking to them. They were very interested in the project. And when it came to financing on the back of these new results, they came in, took 9.9% of the company, which I think is a great vote of confidence. I was very pleased to get such a strong shareholder on board. And the fact that they come in that early in the exploration process also gives me a lot of confidence, because they wouldn't come in if they didn't see real potential for scale also in the project.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you're raising 10.5 million from them, but you're only raising 2 million in addition from other investors. So that number initially sounds quite low, and maybe you can give us some more context on that, because I'm sure you're being bombarded with dollars right now.
Well, we had a lot of interest after we announced our results, both from institutional investors and also from strategics. Tech really put an offer on the table that we couldn't refuse, but that also meant there were a lot of good investors whom we would have liked to invite as shareholders, whom we couldn't accommodate, and just did a very small top-up financing on top of the financing with tech to at least some long-term shareholder and some of the interest that we had.
Okay, you just answered partially my next question. Like, who's taking the $2 million? You said some long-term shareholders are getting a chance to top up, of course. Anybody else you're bringing in that you can talk about? Or I know it's always a bit of an issue, even before you closed it. So.
Mm-hmm. But it's only a very small top-up financing, and as you said, long-term shareholders and the team are mostly in there.
Fantastic. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Just out of curiosity, like where are the inbounds coming from? I always try to gauge a bit of a generalist interest. Was there a big interest more from generalist investors that you had to turn away, or where was the interest coming from now? The money that you have to send away as well, of course.
It was a mix, and it was also interest from some really good institutional investors. And yeah, I think this time round we went with tech, but there will be more financing rounds in the future. And that's when we'll then, I think, we'll be able to hopefully get some more institutional investors in the boat as well.
No, fantastic. That sounds great. And of course, you're an exploration company. You will have to raise again. So that's not a big secret. And I'm always surprised when investors make it. I was like, well, they have to raise money again. It's like, well, they're an exploration company. They're not generating revenues. So that's always a big surprise when you hear that. So let's wrap that up, the financing part. You're closing October 6th is the plan. Is that correct? Are we still on track for that?
That's correct, yes.
So that's next Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Fantastic. Okay.
Yep.
And
we had some charity flow through in the financing, and that always takes another week or two to complete. That's why we are targeting the 6th of October.
Good points. Like, it's only been open for a couple of weeks anyway, a little over 2 weeks, so I'm not too worried about the closing anyway. So, but it's a good segue as well. Like, talking about the closing of the financing, because you've been drilling phase 2 at MPD at the Gate Zone. Like, what's news flow going to look like? How many holes are in the lab right now? How many are you sitting on results right now, waiting to close the financing?
We have in total 6 holes that we have drilled so far, and our results that we released already were from 2 holes. So it's the initial 2 holes of the program, and so 4 more to come. And we are of course continuing to drill, so there will be then more news flow afterwards. And for the next batch of results, that will be sometime later in October, most likely. We will most likely release several holes at once in a batch, and then more to come later in the autumn and winter.
Okay, let's talk more about the Driller program. Phase 1, you talked about you had some decent results in 2019, but the market was like meh. Like, it was a different market back then as well, but you didn't get the interest that you're getting now, obviously, right? So what has changed? Like, what have you learned from phase 1, and like, how is phase 2 different? And just give us more of a rundown on the exploration program right now.
Yeah, as you said, we started drilling just about a year ago with a very small maiden drill program, and we're able to announce a nice initial discovery hole, the Gate Zone, in January. And that was a long hole, 800 meters long, mineralized top to bottom, and it had a higher grade zone between sort of 300 to 500 meters down, so relatively shallow still. And that high-grade zone we targeted with our next round of drilling this year in summer. And we did some geophysics. We saw that there was a nice big anomaly just also where we saw the highest grade in core. So we drilled into that anomaly, and that's where we then got the results that we just released, which were the grade just significantly higher than what was ever drilled before on the project. The overall intercept was 282 meters of 1.16 copper equivalent, which is a fantastic grade for any porphyry, particularly for one in southern BC, very accessible. And as I said, that's really a game changer for the project.
Yeah, it does make a lot of difference. It does. Yeah, 1.16% is fantastic, and I'll actually be in Merritt on Friday, so I'll be a stone's throw away from the project. So maybe we can organize something once. Like it's only a drive away. It's like two and a half hours. I think this way, 2.5 hours this way from me. So it's not that far. About the drilling right now, like the holes that have been drilled and the results, like how do they line up? Like where are they placed? Sort of like what can we expect there? How have they been targeted?
Well, we've drilled from 2 setups and targeted, as I mentioned, this high grade zone that we saw in our initial discovery hole. So we drilled 3 holes from one setup, stepped out 75 meters, drilled another 3 holes from the second setup. And that's what we've done so far. Probably we'll drill 1 more hole from the second setup again, and then step out further. We have a very large anomaly, copper in soil anomaly, which is 1 kilometer long, 300 meters across, which defines roughly our target area. So we have our hands full and lots more work and lots more drilling to come.
Oh, lots more work. And one thing I want to touch on as well, like in the presentation, and you mentioned it before, I think I heard it in other interviews, that you're using new interpretation and new technology to sort of go over old and existing projects. So the MPD was owned by Rio and Newmont, and I'm sure they're smart guys there and they're big companies. Like, what makes your approach different? Like, why are you, let's, for lack of a better term, better than Rio and Newmont? Why are you taking a different approach, right?
There's a very simple answer to that, which is we drilled deeper. Yeah. The project MPD has been drilled since the 60s, so for over 50 years by big companies. Important to know also, it was never as one consolidated package, but there were smaller projects that different companies poked holes into at different points in time. And 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, when you drilled for porphyries, the drilling typically would be 100 meters down, 200 meters down. Companies would drill shallow, and it's only relatively recently that you see much deeper drilling. And that's really the explanation. It was a project that had been drilled, but nobody had drilled deeper, and that's where we saw the opportunity. When Chris Taylor visited, he saw porphyry rocks all over square kilometers. And his interpretation was that we are on top of a large system here, and just nobody had drilled into it properly yet. And hence, we drilled down to 800 meters. Our original exploration thesis, if you will, was that we are looking at a deep porphyry target, and we were then actually positively surprised that the best grades weren't that deep at all, but between 300 and 500 meters, which is still relatively shallow.
Yeah,
particularly since we have near-surface drill results as well with quite respectable grades.
Yeah, fantastic. And I meant to drill down a bit more on Chris Taylor's role as well. He's chairman, not executive chairman, so theoretically he's a tad more in the background than an executive chairman. Like, how much time is he dedicating to Kodiak? Like, how much is he helping you in the day-to-day?
Well, he's very much guiding the technical work. As I said before, his core expertise is copper porphyries. He started his work as geologist with Imperial Metals, drilling porphyries all over North America. He drilled Red Crest and Mount Poly. So that's really his home turf, and he's very much involved in the technical discussions. We are going to site in a couple of days' time. We're having planning meetings with our VP Exploration, Jeff Ward, our VP Operations, Andy Barry, and Chris, and sort of brainstorming and planning the next phases of work. So he very much guides our work, and I'm very fortunate. We are very fortunate to have Chris's expertise to tap into.
No, fantastic. And yeah, he's very hands-on. I like to hear that. And because he's well respected, obviously, with Great Bear, he had some fantastic success. And a lot of investors followed him into Kodiak. because of his person as well.
Yep.
Let's talk about next steps for the company as well. So you're raising $12.5 million. Is that the final number? Or is there going to be an over allotment?
That's the final number.
Final number. Okay. What are the plans moving forward? You're closed out. How much will you have in the bank? Obviously, you have a little bit left, but how are you going to spend that money now?
Well, we have then around about 15 million or so in the bank because we have, as you said, still some money in liquidity. I have also warrants coming in, and that puts us in a very good position in that we can really plan the best way forward for our work without having to worry to raise the next tranche of funding in only a couple of months' time. So that gives us some nice runway to really do the best work we can, and that's the next stage, really, to look into the best way forward for the project, see how we scale up the drilling and where we go next, and planning the work, the next stage of work on the project. And as we speak, this is very much a work in process.
For sure.
And we're very busy.
You said it's in the presentation. It's a porphyry. It's going to take some drilling. It's going to take some time, and I think everybody understands that. You mentioned warrants, and I just while you were chatting, I was just scrolling down here in your corporate presentation. So you got 6.3 million warrants outstanding, with an average exercise price of 78 cents. Give us a little more color. Who's holding those warrants? They're obviously coming in. You're trading at $3.25. You'd have to be a fool not to exercise, right? Where are the shares going? Are they in steady hands, or do we have to actually be worried a little bit? Once the next set of results come, there's some selling pressure.
Well, the warrants, they are from our previous financings, and many of them are with our long-term shareholders, or many of the holders I know personally. It's the people I speak to on a regular basis. And as you said, those warrants are coming in at the moment. We have quite a steady stream of warrant exercises since we announced the results.
No, it's fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted.
Unfortunately, the financing with tech, that was straight shares, so no more warrants. So I think a couple of months down the road, we will have very few or no warrants left in our capital structure.
No, fantastic. I wanted to hear that confidence. It's long-term shareholders that own the shares that are going to hold. They're not going to be selling straight into the market and dump their stock. That's really important to hear as a investor and shareholder. Let's switch over to Twitter. We've got a lot of questions in, and I've been talking way too much. So let's. There've been some really smart questions, and let me just start at the bottom and how they came in. So Pete Panda is asking, what can we expect as an upgraded drill program at the gate zone? Does that mean extra rigs, or how many meters in addition now?
As I said, all of that is very much a work in progress. We are busy planning the next stage of work. What we will make sure is that we spend our drill dollars wisely, that we will have all the geological interpretation, all the homework, all the boring stuff done first before we drill. And at the moment, we continue drilling with one drill rig, and then at some point we'll scale up. But as I said, that's still work in progress, and we'll announce when we're ready.
Fantastic. So his follow-up question is, will you drill Dillard still this year? So I'm guessing that's still part of the planning stages.
It is, but it's actually an interesting question because we have a very interesting target at Dillard, and our initial plan when we started the summer program was to drill our last hole at Dillard. But then, as it often goes, when you drill, the results that you get that drive where you drill next. And when we saw what we drilled at the gate zone, then of course we didn't move the drill. We kept drilling, and so we never got around to drill Dillard, but we do have a very interesting target there that looks very similar to the one we just drilled successfully. So yeah, that's out there, and we will drill it at some point.
Fantastic. And next question is from Graham Walker. And given that porphyry targets take many, many years of drilling to prove up, will the historic drilling be helpful in determining the size potential, or not, because that drilling was much shallower?
It is, of course, very helpful, and it shows the size potential of the deposit. Historic drilling in square kilometer area And from all we can see, we're probably looking at multiple porphyry centers there. And the historic drilling, some of it is quite respectable grades and interesting results. And that, of course, guides our work. We have now a 10 square kilometer large area with good near surface results where we have poked deep holes into one small corner, and that has kicked the door wide open. And yeah, we have a lot more work to do.
Fantastic. And he has a second question as well. And given that you have a much larger market cap to justify now, how has your definition of a successful exploration program or season changed? Do you feel more pressure now that you're a $120 million market cap company to deliver good results than when you were a $20 million market cap company? I think that's the question he's asking.
The market cap changes my pressure or my feeling of good results. I mean, that's just the nature of our work. We want to generate good results for our shareholders and make this a successful exploration program and the future programs as well. I very much believe in the potential of this project and in the size potential as well. And the fact that Tech invested, I think that's also an indication of the size potential they see. And yeah, a big porphyry project is worth many billions of dollars. And that's what success looks like for us. And we're only at the start, really. We have only really just started drilling.
Fantastic. Claudia, this was a great conversation. And at the end, we always allow our guests to sort of put a bow around it, summarize it for us. What can we expect in the next 3 months? We talked about lots of it, but it's always nice to put it in 3-4 sentences and summarize it for everybody.
Well, coming soon, later in October, I think. And we've shown some of the core already of some of the holes that will be in there in our last news release, and it looks very good. So we're confident that we'll have some more good results coming, and then onwards and upwards from there. More drilling and more results to come.
Fantastic. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. You're actually here in Vancouver as well. You're not too far from me, I think. And you're not in the office, are you? Because your office is just a block away. So
yeah, no. I'm in my home office.
Home office. Fantastic. Everybody else, really appreciate you asking the questions. This is an interactive format. This is for you. This is why it's live. You can ask the questions directly, and we really appreciate the questions. Thanks for following us on YouTube, on Twitter. Make sure to leave some comments, hit the like button, and stay tuned for our other update. We have Theo Ditchev from Mundoro on tomorrow as well. So thanks for joining us here. And Claudia, we'll talk again very soon. I hope to bump into you at Shuezo for a coffee soon.
Thank you, Kai. Yes, that would be a pleasure.